Good morning, everyone. I'm more than happy to be here today. And I gotta tell you something. I'm a conservative guy. I live at a place at the far northern area of Israel, which is called Haifa. And see, in Haifa, we don't have nightlife or life. So for this reason, every evening, me and my wife, we sit and watch TV. We watch our favorite TV show, which is called Mabat. That's, for the younger of us, it's the local news for old people. Then every night at 9:30, we're already at bed, reading our favorite books, and calling it a day. Conservative people. And like life, I also have a conservative stack. So for the API layer, I'll do usually Express or Nest.js, data access, SQLize. For the building tool, I use NPM workspace. Conservative stack. Now, I could live with this stack for a long time, only I really like YouTube cooking shows, and I really like cooking. Now, anytime I visit YouTube, it keeps presenting me there on the right side, recommendation from a gang of hipsters that telling that my stack is obsolete, that I'm a dinosaur. See, they tell me things like, stop using Rest, stop using Graph, although I never had the chance to learn Graph, stop using backend, buzzwords which I don't know what they even mean. This guy, you see him, I swear, he switched like 10 different ORMs in a month. And overall, YouTube makes me feel old. I tried to ignore it for a while, but I want to be young again. I told my wife, let's go out, let's dance. I want to code like an hipster. Now, because there's no nightclubs in Haifa, I just went into refreshing my technical stack. And this is what this talk is about what's new, what new opportunities you might find on the API layer, the build tooling, the data access, but not just features and opportunities, but also crossroad, a critical journey through what are the considerations that you should apply, things that you might have missed, downside of popular tooling, advice that maybe, just maybe, will provide you from very typical pitfalls in your when you choose your next set of tooling. Let's start our journey there with the data access layer. Because unusual things, I think, happening on this layer, and for a reason. Few years ago, there were a lot of concerns about the maintainability and even continuity of the traditional ORM, SQLize type ORM. And into this vacuum, there is now an explosion of new tooling. What you see here is type ORM and SQLize, the traditional, and here is Prisma, the yellow line. In 2 years, they raised $40 million. They get tons of community attention. I thought about covering this, but then I noted over the last couple of months, there is a new, very interesting family of tooling. What you see here, the pink line, is Drizzle, that it is part of family of tools that I call Lean ORM. And they bring something fresh to this offering. Let's compare our options, which are traditional ORMs versus Prisma versus Lean ORMs. Let's judge by code. This is Prisma model. This is how you define DB tables. For example, a country table with some fields and an order table with some fields. And this is how you define a reference, a foreign key in a table in Prisma. Now, if you wonder what is this file format, is this YAML, what is it? It's Prisma's own format to make your DB model's expression very clean. If you want to contrast, this is how, and don't try to read it, please. This is SQLize, same code DB model. Like there is generic here and duplication. I couldn't even paste everything into the slide. In Drizzle, it looks as follows. You define an order table, some fields, foreign table, pure JavaScript, very clean. I like it. Then back to Prisma. Once you have the model, really, there's a lot of things to love about Prisma, but one of the most impressive areas is its end-to-end data workflow features. For example, when you have a model, you can generate a migration. If you change something, it knows to sync. You can push to DB, or you can go the other way around. You can start from DB and generate your model. Now, other ORMs, Drizzle and others, they support some of these features, but not to the same, not to the level of specificity like Prisma. It really goes to the distance. I'll give you one example for an advanced feature. Say that you change locally your database, but forgot to update the migration. Well, then it works only on your machine. Prisma's diff command can realize this right away and make you fail fast. And this is only one example of how comprehensive is Prisma in this field. Then Prisma generates another thing, a typesafe client, functions to approach the DB. Like this. Here I can import the client and tell the order table to get all the records. Specify which field should be part of the result. And if I mistype any field, I get immediate type safety warning. Now, other ORMs can also provide some level of type safety, but not cover the same edge cases like Prisma. Here's an example. Say that you have multiple nested tables in your query. Anywhere where you're going to misspecify a field name, like say that there's no code field, Prisma is going to highlight this area. Really superior type safety. And this is Drizzle. With Drizzle, this is how a query looks like. And the syntax makes matter. So we call the DB, select statement, from, where, left join, SQL, right? It looks really similar to SQL. Now, one point worth mentioning is that Prisma does nothing with the result. It just pipes what the DB driver returns. So there's almost raw grade performance, almost no performance penalty. Also, Drizzle comes with type safety, quite good one. See here, I have to specify a number for order ID, but it's a date. Drizzle knows to tell you. So what are the key differences? What things really matter here? Okay, look at this query. Can you tell me which SQL is about to get produced here? Well, on the left side you have Drizzle, on the right side the generated SQL. I don't think that any developer on earth could ever say, I don't have a control over the SQL here. I can't guess, because it's so similar, one-to-one. Look at it. It's really the same syntax. Actually, Drizzle has no unique API. It's just implementation of SQL keywords in JavaScript functions. Very similar. Now, let's do the same drill with Prisma. Look at this same query, this time with Prisma. Which SQL is about to be produced here? So on the left side, you can see Prisma. On the right side, the SQL. Surprise! 2 DB calls, 2 queries. Why? The engine made a decision. Sometimes it can be more efficient, sometimes not. And no complaints here. You just got what you asked for. You asked for a tool to simplify DB work, to abstract it, you got it. And by definition, it hides some of the details from you. This is the aim of Prisma. With type ORM, there are multiple syntax, but you can go with a query builder-like syntax and have something that looks very similar to SQL. See here, same query, but here I can specify exactly that it is a left join, very close to SQL, much less abstract than Prisma. But does it matter? Because there were some rumors about that these projects are not maintained anymore, so who cares about their syntax? Well, surprise here. I crunched into the numbers and checked the maintainability of SQLize and Prisma using a tool that's called Tripo Tracker, and found that they have multiple PRs a week, multiple issues are handled today, 15 releases by year, every year. Now, I don't know what this number means as an absolute, but I think it's fair to say if you release a version every month, that it is reasonably maintained, right? And overall, these ORMs are the most feature-rich, they are battle-tested, and during my journey, I become to love these veteran ORMs again. So, a lot of options. Which one should you choose? I think it's worth framing all the options over this graph. On the x-axis, we have how much control we have over SQL. So if you do raw queries, you have maximum control. But on the y-axis, it's how much features you have to support your data workflow. And you get nothing for raw, right? Not even migration. Query builders, less control, more features. ORMs, somewhere in the middle, right? A lot of features, less control. Where would you point? Where you put Prisma? I suggest here, right? It scores the best for end-to-end features, but you get the less SQL control. And where would you put Drizzle? I think somewhere here, right? A lot of control, also a decent amount of feature. So which one is the winner? Well, it's not about winner, but about what I think are key 3 different scenarios. In scenario 1, you have a data-intensive application, non-trivial workload. Then you probably want to go more toward the right side of the map, right? And here, things become interesting because, and I'm looking at you, people used to do row queries and always avoiding ORM. Oh, I want full control over my SQL. Now, for the first time, you have another opportunity to consider. Things like a lean ORM. You get almost full control over SQL, but features that you need. Option 2 is kind of medium complexity level. You don't really know, you want some kind of generic tool. Then makes sense to go somewhere here in the center. And I think that in this department, the traditional ORM really scores a sweet spot because they are very generic, very feature-rich, mature, and they are probably a good tool for this workload. Option 3, you have some casual workload. You know, crude application, maybe your full stack team is not highly knowledgeable about SQL. Then you look for something on the left side. And I think that at least here, Prisma is the big winner because its development experience and end-to-end workflow features are really outstanding, at least for this department. And if you're curious to hear more about Prisma and modern ORM, we have today Nicholas Berg, straight from Germany at Holby. Consider visiting here there. So if an ORM is a key decision, I think that choosing your main framework is not less, right? So which framework should you choose now in 2023? Back in 2020, I think that we have Express and Nest.js. Now, fast forward to this year. Express, well, I got nothing new to tell you about Express because the last time Express released anything new happened when I had long hair, and this was long ago. So for many teams, for this reason, among others, Express is not longer a good option. And this is where Fastify, which emerged over the past few years, becomes interesting. So it's Fastify versus Nest.js. Which one should you go with? First, I'd like to clarify 2 fallacies. Fallacy number 1, Fastify is a library like Express, it's small, it's thin, and Nest.js is a framework. Fallacy number 2, you can use Fastify as the web server of Nest.js and enjoy the good from both worlds. I don't think that's true, and I'm going to try to prove it to you. Think about it. What do you want your framework to cover? What areas? What functionality? So you need a router, probably, and the message queue, schedule job, configuration, validation, logger, and all of these things that are familiar to you. Out of all of this, what does Express cover? Only this small blue area, right? Fastify, though, cover much more. Most of the functionalities that you are going to probably expect from a framework with its 53 official plugins. It's quite rich. Not as rich as Nest.js. Nest.js, by the way, covered the entire map and more, but rich. So it's a framework versus framework. This is one of your key decisions now to make head-to-head Fastify or Nest.js. Let's try to compare them, mostly the strategic dimensions. So about comprehensiveness, as you saw, Fastify is comprehensive, but Nest.js is more. Community, Fastify has a vibrant community, but Nest.js is much more, tons of Stack Overflow questions, more than 10 Udemy courses. I think there is one department where Fastify probably takes the lead, and it's simplicity. Fastify is based on procedural code, very stick to JavaScript standards, and Nest.js, I have some concern there. Let me tell you a story. See, I work as a Node.js consultant. I hold workshops for organizations, and at one of my workshops, one young developer approached me and said, "Hey, can you help me with this code? I'm having a problem." I say, "Let me show. I can try." And she showed me this code and said, "Hey, I'm trying to make an HTTP call and to this URL, but the error is not caught." I told her, "Okay, let me try. Look here. What is this syntax? Looks familiar, something from the past." Hey, then I noted above, it's RxJS. I asked her, why are you using RxJS for a simple HTTP call? And she told me, I'm not. It's what Nest.js recommends, and it's part of their HTTP client. Now, think about it. Young developer, already overwhelmed with so many technologies to learn. Now she has to deal with a reactive functional stream library for a simple web request? What an overkill. And don't get it wrong, even senior developers can shoot their foot with complex, unnecessary technologies in SJS. Overall, I think that, and you know how simple it could be, right? Like as simple as this. And with Fastify, this is your only option. There are no abstraction. You have to stick to JavaScript and Node.js standards. And I think that overall, Nest brings a complex mindset. For example, if you code with Fastify, you have to learn this concept first. Controller, handler, decorate. I might have missed something. With Nest.js, you have to know about controller, interceptor, application guards, decorator, pipes, provider, module, internal queue, live, and the list goes on and on. Much more moving parts, and by definition, increased complexity. And for me, I think that for others as well, take all the considerations in the world. Performance, reactive, a lot of buzzwords. Nothing equal to keeping things simple. Once things get complex, this is an end game. So I think to make choice, it all boils down to, I like Fastify because it's simple. And SJS, I don't disrecommend it, but I think that there is an inner crossroads zone, a choice in the choice. You can use Nest.js in two ways. One, in a full-fledged manner, load 50 patterns, everything, abstract all the standards, then there I have a concerns with complexity. Or option two, just stick to its core engine. It's great. And for everything where it overlaps with a standard, everything where you can go with a simpler tool, with less abstraction, I think there you can get a powerful framework, but with much less complexity. And I think we have covered backend frameworks, but now we have another thing to think about, which is full stack. Now we have to take care for the front end as well. Why? Because we have things like type sharing, shared validation, shared authorization, progressive rendering, and a lot of, I don't know, new words that I don't even understand. And the market is not short of tooling, like Next.js, Remix, and others. I want to cover today one that is lesser familiar, trpc, TypeScript Remote Procedure Call, but 25 stars in less than a year. It's really trendy. Let's see if the expectations can stand to the hype. Let's see some code. So I'm creating now a web server with trpc. I'm importing the library, and I'm specifying that I want an adapter, Express. Why? Because it can get built upon existing libraries like Fastify, Next.js. So I'm going to use Express. I'm going to initialize trpc and then define a router. What is a router? Here it is, like Express, a collection of routes. Simple. So here I define my router with a route to create a new order. Only now, unlike Express, I can define an input schema. See here, this is all the validation library where I put a TypeScript type and validation, and I can define exactly what type of data is going to be fed into my route, including runtime validation. Nice. Then just define that it's a mutation type of call, and this is my own code. This is beyond the scope of trpc. And this line is interesting because what we do here, we export to the front end our router with all the routes and the type definition. So on the front end side, and now I'm switching to the front end side, this is a React example. Let's see the benefit now. I can import trpc and import the app router from the backend, assuming that it is a monorepo. I get from the backend all the types and routes. Why? Let's see. First, I'll define the backend URL. And now this is the React component, very simple one, order form, where I have a single button. And upon click, when I need to send data to the server, it's not longer fetch, Axios, headers, cookies, rather a simple function call, just like a function. If I double click on this function, I'll just read the server implementation. I can do refactoring very easily. It's not only about development experience, but also about type safety. So if I'm now on the backend side, if mistakenly I change the contract, rename a field, change the data type, like here from string to number, the front-end build is broken right away. I get type safety across the board in a very easy and simple manner. Sweet, I love the library simplicity. But I have one main concern with this approach. See, in an ideal world, you just have trpc. So you get the web server for validation, easy. But in real world, you already have your main framework, right? Even if it's the frameworks that you coded at work. And these two, by definition, interfere, overlap. Why? trpc has its own way of error handling, same your framework. trpc has its typing system, but Fastify also has its typing system, right? In validation approach. Think about it. How can routes with one syntax live nearby routes with other syntax? Doesn't make sense, right? To put a mini framework in a framework. In other words, it brings value, but also disruption. There is high price to try to blend some kind of full stack framework into a backend framework. Luckily, usually there are linear options. So you have a backend, you have a frontend, put the blue shape there, a shared folder. Make the backend export types. The frontend import them, and you get type safety. Well, not as good as, or if you want publish to NPM, create an SDK, go to the distance, but use standard tools. Well, trpc is maybe more neat and hardened, but much more disruptive. So my overarching point is that even if you have some kind of front-end support need, try to stick to your battle test and backend frameworks whenever you can. Use your existing tools to try to extend it and publish information. And then, only if you really have deep need to support the front end, like it's a backend for front end or progressive rendering, go with a framework like Next.js or others. One of them is Remalt. And if you're curious what is Remalt, we have today somebody who for me is one of the world specialists about full stacking application and will show features way, way beyond type sharing. This is Noam at AllBeast3, right? Awesome. Well, our journey continues into build tooling, monorepos, and also here, JavaScript. The list is not short. But I'm going to suggest there is one minimum set of features. I'm going to put a bar, a minimum set of features that if a library can't support, it goes out of this list. And now 80% are going to be removed. And this minimum set of features is related with the following very typical scenario. I have a backend. It takes 5 seconds to build and get tested. But it depends on library 1, which is built in 20 seconds. Depends on library 2, which is, again, each one of them needs 20 seconds to get built. So overall, I think that we need 65 seconds only to run the test of my backend. This is how it works. You can't build a TypeScript if your dependencies were not already built. However, if I use one of the modern tools, things are going to look better. So here, for example, I'm using a tool that is called Turborepo, and I'm asking it to run the command test only for my backend, and it starts running, and I get a result. After 6.5 seconds, my backend tests are over, including all the builds. How come? It's much faster than we thought. Well, if you look at the log, library 1, 2, and 3 were built from the cache. Maybe I built them in the past, the same version, or maybe even my teammate builds them in a different machine or in the cloud. It knows to grab the cache and use it instead of building anything. Again, sweet, I really love it. I cannot imagine myself programming without this set of features. And out of the list that I've showed you, only two tools that are related with the JavaScript world can support this minimum set of features. And it's NX and Turborepo. Let's try to compare these libraries. So first, we need them to build in order to realize the dependencies graph and run it intelligently. Both can do it. We need caching. Both can do it. NX is even faster and more feature-rich. And that's it for Turborepo. Turborepo can do nothing else, just build fast, caching. NX takes this to the distance with much more features. Let's see an example. This is my IDE, WebStorm, VS Code. I have a UI inside my IDE where I can scaffold a new microservice. So see, I chose a name here. This is my microservice. And here is a question. Which framework do you want? And NX is going to generate for me a whole solution with best practices inside and configuration. When you look inside, I get very neat features. Like if I have a front end, it comes with refresh functionality. If I change my backend, the front end is refreshed automatically. They create a tunneled proxy between them with immediate refresh reload. And automatically end-to-end tests that are pointed toward the front end and the backend folders. Another fancy feature, see, the backend usually approaches libraries. But if a library tries to approach a microservice, this doesn't make sense, right? Well, NX can create lint rules that prevent this kind of things that violates our architecture and stop it. Really fancy things, and these are just few examples. But what is the price? Well, for a start, when you look at the generation code, it asks you which bundler you need. It's not transpiler bundler. I don't need a bundler, it's backend. But there is no other option. I get an unusual visitor now in my code, a bundling. Okay, now my code was generated. Look at the code. Who is missing? This is my microservice, backend. A very good friend of us. Package JSON. No package JSON by default. Well, but how can I customize things? How can I specify NPM scripts, engine, module exports? Even some runtime features of Node.js depends on package JSON. Well, it turns out that NX had their own kind of package JSON, project JSON, with their own syntax. And they even wrap the NPM scripts with their own coding. In other words, Turborepo demands nothing but putting some 20 lines of JSON and comes with a black box approach. It knows nothing about your code, only about your package JSON scripts. So if you remove Turborepo tomorrow, nothing happens to your code. The build gets slower. NX, on the other end, comes with a gray box approach. It gets into your code. It makes decision, configuration changes, and sometimes overlaps with the standards. Now, it feels a little bit much more than a monorepo, like a wedding. And don't get me wrong, you might like the bride. You might think that she's awesome. But you might say, yeah, I need these features. I'm willing to pay the price. Oh, really? So I checked in 4 different social networks and asked, hey, what is the main features that you need from a monorepo? And 56% answered, I just need build toolings or even less, or folders, that's it. Only 24% said, yeah, I need scaffolding. So isn't this an unnecessary complexity that we get so many moving parts for features that we don't necessarily need? And let me show you why it matters. We have a really vibrant and great Node.js community, WhatsApp community in Israel, with really knowledgeable people. Someday someone asked something about a generator and stream. I thought it's impossible. But then some really knowledgeable team members popped up and say, hey, this is the solution. And wow, okay, amazing. Sometimes even people ask questions out not related to Node.js, and they get answers in minutes. Until one day, someone asked this. I'm using NX integrated monorepo with Nest.js. My debugger stopped working. Any idea how to work around this? Silence. Day later, he tried his luck again. Now, this is the first time ever that I saw this happening in this group. And it left me wondering. Now, so do I basically not recommending NX? No, really no. But I think there are 2 different decisions here that we should separate. First, what tool we use for script and build optimization. The second is scaffolding. It's unrelated, right? Scaffolding is about getting best practices and code. Now, you could be interested in scaffolding also for a single repo or for a multi-repo. It's 2 different sets of tooling. Now, if you separate it, you realize new tooling. So for scripts, I use Turborepo, or it turns out that NX has a lean version that is called NX for packages. It's awesome. It's more feature-rich than repo, and it's a great option. NX for packages. And it comes as a black box approach. Now for scaffolding, I can ask myself, what do I need? Maybe nothing. If I create only 1 microservice per year, so Who cares? But if I need something, maybe my framework, Nest.js, Fastify, they come with a CLI to generate code. Maybe it's good enough for me, no new tooling. But only if I really need a very robust tool, then I can go to NX integrated. See, I didn't start right away with the most fancy and complex solution. I tried to see whether I can fit lean options before I landed on the Ferrari of the tooling. And if you're interested to learn more about this Ferrari and NX, the most feature-rich platform we have, Miroslav Jonas from NX today, speaking also at Hall B. And this was our critical journey through Neo offering. What did I learn? Well, we always had overload, right? JavaScript fatigue, always 1 million Node.js libraries, but what's happening now is different. See, we now have the front-end and full-stack tools overwhelming us. And the tool and the developers ecosystem is being controlled by vendors, so tons of content marketing. Now there is an explosion. It's really, really overwhelming. And very easily, it can damage your application. Instead of small tooling on the side, outside, supporting your architecture, now the tools start interfering with what you have. We saw a tool that overlaps with Node.js standards. We saw tooling that brings tons of complexity and moving parts. And very easily, it can damage your app. Remember the Unix philosophy? Make each program do one thing well. Work with small units that address small problem and make them work together. Well, it stood the battle of time, right? 40 years. So I think one of your precious skills now is cherry picking. Lucky, hopefully you sit here and you choose only tools that are lean, standard. At least try to pick tools that works with Node.js standard, they are thin, and they support your architecture. We always thought about clean coding. Let's start thinking more about clean tooling. Now you're about to go outside and get exposed to the best of breed of the JavaScript offering. Enjoy, embrace new things, come open-minded. But it's also my hope that you cherry-pick thoughtfully. And like my hero, Modi Baron, used to say, well, he said tevalu, so I'll say it for him. Tevalu, which is enjoy. Thank you.